Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Share the channel, hit the bell notification. Hype the video. The real MVP, Caitlin Clark.
Clark Show, baby. Let's go. Let's go. Who got something to say now? Who got something to say now? It's real quiet out there. It's real quiet out there. Caitlin Clark breaking more records, destroying Paige Beckers, destroying the Dallas Wings, showing why. Oh, that's the 11th. Did that look like the 11th best guard to y'all? Did that look like the 11th best guard to y'all? I think the
Caitlin Clark just delivered the kind of performance that instantly changes the conversation around a player. Against the Dallas Wings, Clark put together a spectacular 29-point, 10-assist performance while shooting 11 of 18 from the field and committing just one turnover. But somehow, the biggest story coming out of the game is not simply what Clark accomplished. It is what happened around her. Indiana came away with a 98-87 victory, but the game exposed a growing debate about offensive priorities, rotation decisions, and whether the Fever are maximizing their most dynamic playmaker. Clark once again looked like the engine of the entire offense, creating opportunities, attacking the basket, finding teammates, and taking over when Indiana desperately needed momentum. The third quarter was where everything changed. After a sluggish opening half, Clark exploded for 17 points in the period. She attacked Dallas defenders with confidence, knocked down pull-up shots, drove straight into the paint, and repeatedly created separation with her handle. Every possession seemed to carry a warning for the Wings: give Clark an inch, and she would turn it into a scoring opportunity. But while Clark was taking over, the rotation decisions immediately became a talking point. With roughly 90 seconds remaining in the third quarter, Clark was taken out of the game. Meanwhile, Kelsey Mitchell remained on the floor for the second half. That decision became controversial because Mitchell was reportedly pursuing a streak of scoring at least 20 points, while Clark was in the middle of one of her strongest stretches of the night. For critics, the question was simple: should individual milestones influence rotation decisions when the team is trying to win? Mitchell finished with 21 field goal attempts, making 9, while going just 1-for-7 from three-point range. Her aggressive scoring mentality can obviously be valuable when shots are falling, but the criticism centered on what happens when that scoring becomes inefficient and the offense loses its rhythm. And that contrast made Clark's performance even more impressive. Clark was not simply scoring. She was creating. She was moving the defense, finding cutters, delivering passes into open space, and repeatedly putting teammates in positions to finish easy shots. According to the source material, Indiana missed at least 10 layups that came directly from Clark's passes. If even a portion of those opportunities had been converted, Clark's assist total could have reached an extraordinary level. That is what makes this performance so fascinating. Clark was producing at an elite level while also carrying a playmaking burden that required constant decision-making. She was not just looking for her own points. She was trying to make the entire offense work. And that is where the frustration surrounding the Fever becomes important. Because when a player is creating high-quality opportunities over and over again, the supporting cast has to capitalize. Otherwise, the pressure eventually falls back onto the same player who created the opportunity in the first place. Clark responded exactly the way superstar players are expected to respond. She took over. She attacked the Dallas defense in transition. She used screens, changed speeds, stepped into jumpers, and attacked defenders who tried to pressure her full court. When Dallas backed away, she pulled up. When defenders stepped forward, she went around them. The result was a performance that reminded everyone why Clark remains one of the most dangerous offensive guards in the league. But the victory also left Indiana with a much bigger question. Is the Fever's offense truly being built around Clark's strengths, or are they allowing individual scoring priorities to interfere with the team's overall rhythm? That question is not going away after one win. And the second half of this story makes the debate even more intense. The most revealing part of this game may have been what happened after Caitlin Clark began creating one open opportunity after another. Clark had every reason to chase a massive scoring night herself. She was already in rhythm, Dallas was struggling to contain her, and the third quarter had clearly shifted in Indiana's favor because of her offensive explosion. Instead, Clark continued looking for teammates. She drove into the lane and found open players. She created opportunities around the basket. She delivered passes that put teammates in position to score without having to create their own shots. And according to the source material, that unselfishness played a major role in helping Kelsey Mitchell reach her scoring milestone. That contrast became one of the biggest talking points surrounding the game. Clark finished with 29 points and 10 assists. Mitchell, meanwhile, was aggressively pursuing her own scoring production. The criticism is not that Mitchell should never shoot. She is an important scorer for Indiana. The criticism is about balance. A successful offense cannot become predictable. If one player is constantly trying to manufacture her own shot while another is creating opportunities for everyone else, the difference eventually becomes visible on the scoreboard and in the flow of the game. That is exactly what happened at different points against Dallas. Clark's best possessions were often the ones where she made the defense react. She attacked, drew help, and then made the right read. The ball moved. Defenders shifted. Open teammates appeared. That style of basketball makes an entire team more difficult to defend. The source material also highlights the contributions Indiana received from Ty Harris, who went a perfect 5-for-5 from three-point range and scored 15 points. Her performance showed what can happen when players capitalize on the opportunities created by Clark's offensive gravity. When Clark draws defenders toward her and teammates knock down open shots, Indiana suddenly becomes extremely difficult to stop. That is the blueprint. But there were also signs that the Fever still have work to do. Several players missed opportunities around the basket, including layups created by Clark's passing. Aaliyah Boston had a double-double but also missed some close-range opportunities. Lexi Hull, Sophie Cunningham, and Michaela Onyenware were also mentioned in the source material in connection with missed scoring chances. Those mistakes may not matter as much against Dallas, especially when Indiana still manages to win by 11 points, but against a championship-level opponent, wasted possessions can become the difference between winning and losing. That is why the coaching decisions are now attracting so much attention. Stephanie White has the difficult responsibility of managing personalities, minutes, matchups, offensive rhythm, and player development at the same time. But when one player is dominating a particular stretch, fans naturally expect the rotation to reflect that momentum. Clark's 17-point third quarter created exactly that situation. She was hot. She was attacking. She was creating. And yet she was removed while Mitchell remained on the floor. Whether that decision was simply a normal coaching choice or influenced by Mitchell's scoring streak is something the source material raises as a point of debate, not something that can be established as fact. Still, the perception matters. A locker room has to believe that winning comes before individual statistics. That principle becomes especially important when a team is trying to develop a championship identity. Clark's performance demonstrated what that identity could look like. She scored when necessary, passed when the defense collapsed, and continued creating even when teammates missed opportunities. Her numbers tell only part of the story. 29 points. 10 assists. 11 made shots on 18 attempts. 1 turnover. Those numbers show efficiency, but the film described in the source material shows something even more important: control. Clark controlled the pace. She controlled the defensive attention. And when Indiana needed a spark, she provided it. But there is still one final piece of this story. Because Clark's latest performance did not just add another impressive game to her resume. It pushed her further into a category where she is increasingly competing against her own records. And that is where the bigger WNBA conversation begins. Part 3. Caitlin Clark's latest performance was historic according to the source material, marking her 20th career game with at least 20 points and 10 assists. The significance of that number is enormous because the discussion is no longer simply about whether Clark can produce elite numbers. It is about how quickly she is accumulating them. Clark's combination of scoring and playmaking continues to separate her from traditional scoring guards. A player who can score nearly 30 points while also producing double-digit assists forces defenses into impossible decisions. If one player is constantly trying to manufacture her own shot while another is creating opportunities for everyone else, the difference eventually becomes visible on the scoreboard and in the flow of the game. That is exactly what happened at different points against Dallas. Clark's best possessions were often the ones where she made the defense react. She attacked, drew help, and then made. That is why the debate over Indiana's offensive priorities is becoming so important. The Fever do not need to choose between Clark and their other scorers. The ideal solution is to make those players work together. Mitchell's scoring ability can be extremely valuable when it fits inside the offensive structure. Boston's interior presence can punish teams that overcommit to Clark. Shooters like Ty Harris can make defenses pay for leaving the perimeter. But everything becomes more effective when the offense flows through the right reads. Clark's performance against Dallas showed exactly what that can look like. She was not forcing every possession. She was reading the defense. She was attacking weaknesses. And when Dallas tried to change the defensive look, Clark adjusted. That adaptability is one of the most important qualities for a franchise player. The Fever also have to address the defensive side of the equation. Offensive production can cover mistakes against certain opponents, but playoff basketball exposes every weakness. Missed rotations, poor closeouts, unnecessary turnovers, and inefficient possessions become magnified when the competition gets stronger. Indiana cannot depend on Clark to solve every problem. She can create offense. She can score. She can distribute. But championship teams require 5 players operating with discipline. That is why the Dallas victory should be viewed as both encouraging and concerning. The encouraging part is obvious. Indiana won 98-87. Clark looked spectacular. The offense showed flashes of what it can become. Ty Harris provided an outstanding shooting performance. And Clark once again demonstrated that she can take over a game when the situation demands it. But the concerning part is that the team still appeared capable of making the game much harder than necessary. Missed layups, stalled possessions, questionable shot selection, and rotation decisions all contributed to a game that could have been cleaner. The Fever cannot afford those habits against the league's best teams. And then there is the question of leadership. Clark's body language and intensity were repeatedly highlighted in the source material. That does not automatically mean there is a locker room crisis or that teammates are against each other. Those claims would go beyond what the source establishes. What it does show is a player demanding a higher standard. Clark clearly wants the team to play winning basketball. She wants the ball moving. She wants teammates cutting. She wants open shots converted, and she wants Indiana to turn individual talent into collective success. That is the challenge facing Stephanie White and the coaching staff. The question is not whether Clark is talented enough to carry the offense. She clearly can. The question is whether Indiana can build an offensive system that allows Clark to elevate everyone without asking her to rescue the team every night. Because the Dallas game proved something important. When Caitlin Clark is attacking, creating, and making the right reads, the Fever can look dangerous. But when the offense becomes centered around individual statistics instead of collective execution, the margin for error becomes much smaller. And that may be the biggest lesson from this game. Caitlin Clark did not just put up another big stat line. She showed what Indiana's future can look like when the entire offense moves with her vision. Now the pressure is on everyone around her to match that standard. Because the records may keep falling. The points may keep piling up. The assists may keep coming. But if the Fever want to become a true championship contender, the next step is not another individual milestone. It is turning Caitlin Clark's brilliance into a complete team identity. The most revealing part of this game may have been what happened after Caitlin Clark began creating one open opportunity after another. Clark had every reason to chase a massive scoring night herself. She was already in rhythm, Dallas was struggling to contain her, and the third quarter had clearly shifted in Indiana's favor because of her offensive explosion. Instead, Clark continued looking for teammates.